Time magazine called this the trend of the year, and we are here to see whether it is here to stay or whether it's going to die out. Working from home. Is it good, bad, or evil? We are Candor Beach, and we bring to you world events and how they impact consumer psychology in India and across the world. I'm Ashish, and I have with me Sailesh. Sailesh, what are your thoughts?
I think work from home has been a game changer, but it's more of people getting used to it. So after 2020, after the COVID happened, everybody, most of the industries went work from home, right? So when they went working from home, it became a habit for them. People just got used to it, and we will discuss today like how it impacted a lot of people, like how in different sectors of industries and how people have been attached to work from home, bringing them back to work from office, how that impacted people, and the consumer psychology behind it.
Right, so let's start with the obvious question. Why has it come to be?
There
Was it
was no
something that
choice,
was was it something that was already building up and then the pandemic came in and exacerbated it, or was it something that the pandemic caused?
I think, I mean, work from home existed, right? So people who work from home existed. It was not like pandemic just brought this new pattern. It just exacerbated it. You know,
Right, so it was like a catalyst.
yeah. So the pandemic forced people to work from home because there was no way, isolate. They needed to isolate people to, for the spread, stopping the spread of virus. So for them to stop that, that was the major thing, right? So India had the lockdown, complete lockdown, shut down. So when that happened, people were forced to go to work from home instead of the office.
You know what's funny? So I was flying back to Vizag from Hyderabad where I was working. Flying back to Vizag and for a wedding, and the next thing I know, the lockdown's been announced and I'm stuck here. I think that's something that a lot of people experienced.
Yeah, I believe when the lockdown happened, there were a lot of migrant workers who were
Hmm.
stuck, and they had to literally, they were trying to go back home, and there was not enough transportation during that time. And basically, I believe the government was trying to help them out, go to their hometowns. Basically, all the migrant workers who come to South India from North India to work, they were going through a hardship.
Plus, it was peak summer, if you remember, and I think there were a lot of people who were just dying off because you didn't have transportation. You had to. A lot of people were forced to walk. That was
Yeah.
terrible, but glancing over those trials and tribulations, because we have to focus our conversation on the impact of working from home. What industries do you think were primarily impacted? What industries were not?
So impacted, and you mean in what way? Like who went to work from home,
Who could
or
work from home? Who
yes?
didn't have a choice? Who had to come back?
So I would say the IT industry had the best, best of the best whatever happened to them during this work from home era.
Yeah,
Because
they were already geared towards working from home. You're
yes,
already working with technology. You don't. It's primarily a communication thing. So yeah,
so
I
the
agree.
worst was hit was the labor industry. The labor, they couldn't, how the labor going to work basically from home. The labor industry was hit. The manufacturing sector, they had to work from the industries. When the industry shut down, the way of living went down because they couldn't earn a living, right? So the manufacturing sector went down. Healthcare was the most hit. Healthcare, because they were the first responders, right? So they have to work at the hospital, and all this, especially the patients coming in, the influx of patients, the heavy
So
influx of
just
patients.
so just so we can clarify, manufacturing could not work because the labor force was not allowed back in because of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Um, Healthcare, on the other hand, they were forced to come in, so they
Yes.
were impacted. albeit in the opposite way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
One was forced to come and one was not. I would say that in my experience, I know of certain industries where you have to work with confidential data.
Mm.
They weren't necessarily allowed to continue working from home. They had to operate out of clean rooms where the data does not leak out, like sensitive financial
Yeah.
information. So, so some aspects of some entities within the financial sector, banking, they had to come back into offices.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. Like fishing, you can't fish from home.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
you could from on your PlayStation, but you can't really.
agriculture industry. So
Mhm.
agriculture was hit too. They had to work on the farm.
Right.
So that was,
So
yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say that there are a few other industries like the the moment that the lockdowns ended, I feel like there were aspects like sales, as an example. You can technically have this sort of an interaction where it get on a Zoom call, get on a Skype call, and then peddle your wares. But that personal connect was missing, I think. And that was a key impact that spanned across industries, in my opinion. There are industries that were completely disabled. Like that is what resulted in the supply chain shock that we're still recovering from.
Hmm. The chip
Um,
shortage.
the chip shortage, I would say goods like people weren't able to unload goods, right? Like there was this thing in California where workers refused to unload goods because they were working in ships and they were
They were
burdened
overloaded.
because
Yeah.
yeah, they were overburdened by not having sufficient people. There were a bunch of issues caused the supply chain uh, issue. But yeah, so there were industries that were impacted because of labor shortage. They weren't able to interact with, they weren't able to perform their normal workflow. There were industries where the human experience, the human touch is key. And those were impacted as well because at this point in time, technology does not overcome that, does it?
No,
What are
it
your
does.
thoughts there?
So in just in these sectors, right? You have to go to work. So in manufacturing sector, you have to go to work. You have to be on the manufacturing plant. How are you going to,
Mhm.
send them home? The entire manufacturing stops. So which actually dipped a lot, during the 2020, 2021 PMI index, the manufacturing index actually shot down a lot. So because they were forced to shut down. Only the core manufacturing, which stayed up, was manufacturing of the masks, PPE suits. Those are the only ones which are running at full speed.
So
But
healthcare oriented ones.
yeah, so but the ones which are actually closed down or worked at like a 10% or 20% capacity, they were hit a lot. So the government had to run up credit lines for them. So during that time, so I'm not sure how well the credit line worked for India, but I remember in the U.S. they gave huge, work loans, like so for them
Yeah.
to run. It was part of the injection package. So the what do you call them? The stimulus bill, the first stimulus
Yeah.
bill Trump signed. They had about 450 billion dollars to for industries to come back,
Right, and
especially
that's a little
restaurant industry.
tangential to
Yeah,
right. That's a little tangential to the conversation, but you can talk about. I mean, like if we all remember, that is what aided the subsequent rate hikes because and inflation that we needed to or are still battling through at this
yeah.
point in time. Right, and do you think that this impact, the last 2 or 3 years that we endured, has pushed for advancements in technology around immersive experiences, around machine learning? Like if I bring in automation to manufacturing, I might not need the labor force that I originally needed. If I have immersive experiences, I might not need to travel as much. Like there was VR tourism that really picked up. There is like Microsoft and Facebook and a few other companies are developing communication setups where you can with like an immersive experience communication setup, so you can interact with people. And people so far, like the ones that have experienced it, have said that it is akin to sitting with the other person in the room. Do you think that the pandemic or the working from home had anything to do with the rise of these pieces of technology?
So since you brought that up, the immersive part. So immersive along with the 5G technology, right? So actually helped a lot in the healthcare sector. So now there is a process where a surgeon can do, remote robotic surgery because the latency of the internet is almost negligible or very, very little. So somebody in India probably can perform a surgery using the internet in another country using a robotic surgery. And this is actually being discussed right now because of the 5G revolution, along with the immersive technology. So now basically you can have the entire the surgeon can wear the entire set of the on his face, the VR kit, and basically you have his hands going to be the robotic arms.
Right. I think you are going to have to build in up infrastructure to that, because I was picturing a scenario like we've endured this with colleagues in Bangalore, where halfway through the call they're like, "Sorry, my generator's giving up," or "Oops, the Wi-Fi got cut." So yeah, can you keep the patient alive while I restart my modem?
Let me start the generator back on.
No, I understand that they have backups and obviously will likely want to prevent these sort of scenarios. But I think there is a ways to go in terms of building up that infrastructure, particularly considering I don't want to bring up climate change, but climate change is going to impact this.
Like
You
like
don't
you just
agree?
said, right? Yeah, I rather refrain from climate change topic.
Yeah, not at this point in time. So, all right. So, in terms of an industry impact, I think what we've said is that IT, software, let's also say entertainment to an extent, like gaming.
Yeah,
Movies were obviously impacted. You couldn't
Netflix.
shoot, but
Netflix went up so much during the work from home era, right?
right. So, aspects of entertainment, aspects of anything that was properly digitally enabled thrived
Yes.
over the last 2 or 3 years. Industries that required people to be right there, minus healthcare, because they were forced into it, whether they liked it or not. And again, I think it was a part of their calling, and so a lot of them were happy to be there, of course. But minus those industries, there are a lot of people who were forced to come back in, and or their functions just couldn't perform while they weren't there because of the lockdowns. So that was essentially the industry impact. Um, from an economic standpoint, can you discuss the mental impact that this had on the workers, that work from home has on employees
On which employees? The ones who actually got affected, or the ones who didn't
from
get
both
affected?
both segments? Both segments.
So mental impact, like just for work from home, in IT sector, and the ones who are actually it helped. It was just psychological impact. It was the side effects of this. But economic standpoint actually came into perspective with the ones who got impacted.
Can you elaborate on that, please? When you say psychological impact, what kind of impact was it?
So a lot of people had, especially if you take the IT employees, when you worked at the office, you had all these your colleagues. You could get up, you can walk around and talk to people, have that personal contact with your colleagues, have a chat, have coffee or come back. But but then when you were stuck at home with your pet, that's the only thing you got. Like a lot of people live alone. Unlike in India where you can live with your family and stuff. But a lot of people who actually lived alone actually faced a lot of loneliness, and loneliness, anxiety was up, depression was up.
What did you do
So
to survive the pandemic? Like from your personal experience?
personal experience, I was stuck, man. I was stuck inside, and I watched a lot of Netflix. I watched a lot of TV shows.
Is that why you keep quoting movies to me?
Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff I watched. So
All right.
there was
For
no
my part,
isolation anxiety for me.
understood. So for my part, I started an Instagram account and I went about with music. So I do live performances. I basically record a lot of covers. I enjoyed that, like having a conversation or interacting with whoever joined those live streams, particularly. It's quite fun. So
Tell
I
people
didn't
to
have
join
this.
your Piano Reeves account.
Yeah, I don't have it at this point in time, but maybe
Yeah.
I'll bring it back up. But yeah, I enjoyed myself at that point. So I think some of us found solace in other activities, I guess. And I think this could be a good segue into freelancing, like the topic of freelancing, but we'll broach that in a bit. So we talked about the mental impact. We talked about how some people they were negatively impacted. They felt lonely. What about businesses? What was the impact that they had? Like from a
So
cognitive standpoint, how would I as a business leader want to start making decisions? Like in your opinion, what do you think would the impact would be?
when you say businesses, you have to break them down. You have to say what kind of businesses. So if, for example, if we take the restaurant industry literally collapsed during that. There were a lot of restaurants which actually turned, like shut doors, and they didn't have enough money to come back because for a restaurant to come back, you need money just to start over, to buy the raw materials, start, making everything.
It's capital
The food.
intensive,
Exactly. So
right?
for just because of that, a lot of good restaurants, bars, everything went out of business because of that. And the only
There was
ones which
also
survived,
consolidation because of that. There was also
yeah,
consolidation in the restaurant industry. Bigger
the
restaurants just
bigger ones.
started buying out properties. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of the biggest thing which happened. The big fish eating the small fish, basically.
Mm.
So that was one of the industry, like restaurant industry. But
If I could add to that really quick, but
mhm.
that's also like when you're considering industries, the evolution of industries, this is something that you see fragmented industries when they're maturing, there is consolidation. So let's just say that the pandemic, to use the word exacerbated again, caused that consolidation, that
Yeah,
it provided that
catalyst.
accelerant towards that. Yeah. No, please continue.
So that is one restaurant industry, right? So what other industries which is actually it affected? Like we already spoke about the manufacturing industry. It shrunk the manufacturing industry basically. That's the reason. If you look at it, that's why some of the chip factories were shut down. We have this huge chip shortage even till now. That's why you cannot, I was reading an article about it the other day. Tesla has about 3,000 chips. A regular car has around like 300 chips, like an internal combustion engine. So just because of that much of crunch, they're not able to churn out so many cars so fast. So that
The
wasn't.
thing with I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but the thing with the chip shortage with the automobile industry, one thing that aided that was the fact that they didn't plan for a shift towards using more chips at that time.
Mm.
So when they placed orders with fabs, with chip fabs, uh, they actively canceled orders because they figured that during the pandemic, during the lockdown, they are not going to be able to manufacture, they're not going to be able to sell, and therefore they don't need as many chips. So they canceled orders. And then once the lockdowns receded globally, they found that they wanted to place orders again, right? Like they were able to restart their manufacturing. At that point in time, they found competition with these same fabs with consumer electronic goods because you can only print or you can only make so many chips and you can only make so many architectures. An automobile requires a certain architecture, consumer grade electronic product requires a different architecture. So the fabs were inundated with a kind of architecture that and these ended up being backlogs. The automobile companies' chips ended up being backlogs, so that affected automobile manufacturers as well. The supply chain breakdown, the chip shortage.
Yeah, so that was, I think the chip shortage actually caused, if the chip shortage didn't exist, I
Mm.
think we would have seen a lot more electric cars on the streets.
Yeah, and
Then,
now we're seeing a trend towards hydrogen as well. But
yeah, the Toyota hydrogen car is going to be a game changer. But anyways, let's also talk about the refusal part, like how coming from work from home to the hybrid environment, how did it affect the employees? And legally speaking, I don't think it is, legally they cannot. Employer is actually way more protected than the employee in case of the hybrid work or forcing the employees coming back to work. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I don't know enough about the contractual obligations to force someone to come back to work or to, yeah, well, to basically force someone to come back to work. At the end of the day, it's a stipulated set number of hours that you're working. But maybe that was the agreement, and that is something that employers will be able to build out. Like at the end of the day, they could just say that this is company policy and you are not compliant, and therefore either come
Exactly.
back or leave. So I get that. Um, but I will tell you this, that there are trends across the world that still show that this reticence is strong. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day, like earlier this week, where they were talking about how Silicon Valley, they are looking at contracting real estate. People are looking at companies like Apple, not Apple necessarily, but Google and what have you. They are looking at shutting down their satellite offices in various places because they aren't being optimally used. So from an employer standpoint, I think that's something that's playing on their mind as well. Working from home, whether even when they want people coming back to the office, there are aspects to working from home which are advantageous. Travel, like people tend to be a little more productive. There has been this, like it has been observed that because there's no commute time, employee fraternizing, like the coffee break that you were talking about, that's been minimized. So people tend to be a little more there, a little more productive. And this was something that we were discussing earlier, that your 9 to 5 is no longer 9 to 5. It could be 9 to 6, 9 to 7, 9 to 8, whatever. Like you are available longer. Your net productivity by hook or crook has increased. So employers have seen that. Employers have seen that impact, and some employers are choosing to react to that by reducing their overall real estate footprint.
Mm.
So I will say that is a part of the impact that is also going to play a key role in the whole back to office conversation.
So the back to office thing. So some of these
Hmm.
companies have this, like I had this question, right? So some of these companies have this, 2 days a week, or an employee can come any 2 days a week or 8 days a month or whatever.
Hmm.
So, how does that even help? Like, what is it even going to achieve? Like, now all of a sudden you already spoke about how the real estate shrunk, right? So these huge offices which shrunk down to medium-sized offices because they didn't need these big offices, right? So it actually
Yeah.
increased. They didn't have to pay so much of rent, so it actually increased a lot of profitability for the employer. So when you're going back on to the employee perspective, how is it helping the employee just going 8 days a month for hybrid work? What does it even achieve?
From a productivity standpoint, I don't think it achieves a lot. I think this is more of an interim that the administration is pushing to bring people back to work full time. I think
Yeah.
that is the ploy. There are aspects, or there are conversations about hybrid work. The fact that an employee is within the confines of an institution or within your real estate where you can monitor them, There are like in the past, I've had conversations where people have said that accountability is affected. And therefore, if I have you in the office, there is a little more accountability because I can physically see you. So there are aspects to that which employers, I believe, are hoping to capitalize on. If you are there, I know you are working for me. There are employees that thrive with the work from home, in a work from home setup as well, and they don't need as much uh, supervision. But I will say this, that there are other ways of supervising individuals. Like as an example, track how much time they are on an Office VPN. You can track that. If they're over a certain amount and there is activity continuously, not just that it's on. Yeah, there's continuous activity. You can track the activity on work issued laptops. So there are ways of identifying or seeing the work impact that people are bringing in. Do you have something to say?
What
You
is
look
the
like
activity? So you said, I mean, what if, I buy, like the artificial Tinder thumb and keep on swiping on my trackpad, showing that I'm working, you know?
yeah, but I said VPN, right? So there has to be a transfer of data.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Because
just not keep the thing active.
yeah, I
I
mean,
thought
it
about that.
happened
So
previously.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean that is a way to track. So yeah,
there are
like
lots of
how
ways.
Amazon does it, right? It does. It records how much you typing, what it does micromanaging. Amazon does micromanage.
Possibly, I'm not aware, but that feels a little intrusive. But if you've signed up for it, you've signed up for it.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right, so
yeah. So what about the perspective of moonlighting then?
right, so I feel like we've moved on from impact. We've moved on from the conversation of why this has come to be and what the net impact is to the future of working. Let's just say that the future of work from home, the future of working. Back to office is something we are touching upon. Moonlighting is an interesting thing. So, do you mind if I share my screen really quick?
Sure.
Again, a link that we can put up in the bio for later. So, if you take a look at this, when you're looking at Google Trends, you see that over the last, like since the pandemic began, like say from around 2010, around 2020, we saw a huge spike in working from home, like the conversation about working from home. You see that conversations around freelancing was strong, was reasonable. Like it was close to it was more popular than working from home. But ever since the pandemic and lockdowns hit us, you see that working from home really caught up with the freelancer keyword trend, and over the last year it's just traced it's traced the trend. Like as you see working from home going up, you see freelancer going up, and vice versa. This is the pattern worldwide. I'll just show you India.
Yeah, it's proportional.
Yeah, it is directly proportional. And right here, same pattern. You see how working from home has overtaken freelancers. And then you see how working from home, while consistently more popular with freelancing, is chasing freelancing all across. So I think a consequence of working from home could be the rise of freelancing, or as you had put it, the gig economy.
Yeah, I mean, it depends country by country. It also depends, right? So America is pretty open with moonlighting. A lot of companies are okay, um, but
I don't know about that, but all right, I'll take your word for it for now.
I don't think it's so open with India, I guess. So if you look at Wipro fired 300 people um, for moonlighting, right? Recently, it was Wipro and what was the other company which actually fired another group of people recently?
I think the Indian companies like TCS, Infosys,
Yeah.
Wipro, they've
So
all been looking into it.
yeah, because it's just sensitive information. Like you working for a company, and then you also working on the side for its competition. So which actually causes a conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, the productivity issue as well. Like, how do
Yeah.
I know that you are fully geared to what I'm saying? Like, even if you give me 9 hours and you give them 9 hours or 8 hours or what have you, your efficiency is impacted, right? Like, because your mental stress that you're going through is going to be tremendous. So
Yeah.
you have that as well.
It's extreme overload on the employees. So I mean, you make money, but at the cost of your own, mental agony. So you have to go through that. You have to. Gig economy is good, but then, like when you should be able to, like, it helps, but you should be able to maintain your times right. So you should be able to manage both of these. So I think that's why I say, like
It's hard.
moonlighting.
It's hard,
Yeah,
and people aren't able to
it's not
comply.
good.
But
It's
why I
not
brought
good.
up freelancing?
Yeah,
Why I brought up freelancing though was the fact that there, because of a cost crunch, like you were suddenly forced to reduce your costs, and because of, like, when the pandemic hit us, there was a rapid shift in what you needed. And so there were a lot of jobs that were in flux. There were a lot of jobs that were offered at very high costs, at very high prices to the company. And a lot of people chose to jump ship and take up more profitable ventures. The thing that caused was that it pushed up costs. It put pressure on these companies, and eventually it's like a spring, right? Like it has to uncoil at some point in time.
yeah,
And when it uncoiled, it resulted in massive layoffs. In addition to that, you have people who are in violation of contracts, people who aren't willing to comply with company requirements, like when companies require you to come back for a certain number of days and people aren't willing to do that. It has resulted in a lot of layoffs. Now, these people are taking up entrepreneurial ventures. These people are taking up freelance roles. These people are they're basically floating out there in the market, I believe. Now, if I were to futurecast, I would say that these people will eventually latch on to, again, you're looking for the most salubrious conditions, right? You're already floating about in the environment. I would say your top priority is path of least resistance. But at this point in time, you are like an electron floating about. You want to latch on to the most salubrious condition you can find, the healthiest condition you can find. And so I think they will come back to these companies irrespective. If Amazon or Google or Microsoft or whoever is paying as much as they are, and you can't earn as much as a freelancer, you are going to go back there. However, there are going to be individuals who were working at these institutions that will find an opening in the freelance economy. They will find that they're able to earn a lot more. And I think that is because of the rise of the technologies that we were talking about earlier. Immersive experiences, machine learning, and AI, these are facilitating things where you don't need the skill sets that you needed in the past. I don't need to be a designer to be able to produce design. I have stable diffusion. I don't need, like, if I were to design for AR as an example, I have Adobe Aero, I have Adobe Substance, I have a bunch of tools at my disposal today that I can just leverage, and they are AI powered. There's this one tool called Cascada, I think, that has an
yeah.
active physics engine. So like when I'm creating 3D models and I'm creating an animation using 3D models, I can just click on active physics and it does a part of the work for me. My workflows have simplified. So I believe there are people who are going to look at new skills, they're going to get retrained, and they're going to thrive in this gig economy. That is that is one of the shifts that I see.
Yeah, the freelance market exploded, right, during
Yeah.
these past few years. Like it actually, I mean, moonlighting is just if you're working for a competition, but if you freelancing, I don't think that is moonlighting, right? Let's say you're working for a
No, not
company and you're
necessarily.
freelancing, so
You're
that
right.
is not, yeah. So what if you become an artistic creator and make money on the side? That's a completely new a passive income just on top of the income you're already getting. And on top of that, I've seen a shift of a lot of people who got laid off, the recent laid off in the last few years. Actually, it actually increased a lot of new entrepreneurs. A lot of people started up with startup companies.
Yes, exactly what I said, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the entrepreneurship, it increased. You're right. So especially in the agriculture sector, a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah. I was reading a few articles, right? So there's this website called betterindia.com. So I was reading a few articles. A lot of these tech employees who actually got fired, or during this time, who got, who just left the jobs, they actually came back, and they came back home. They're probably the village or some, and they started a huge, they started small and it became big. One of the big examples is there was this company. It's a startup, right? Started by two women actually who went to IIT, and they left their jobs. They actually sell livestock on an app. Yeah.
Wow. I think you've shared this with me.
Yeah, so
I think you've
but it's
shared
all
this
in
with me.
Hindi, like everything you can
Yeah.
buy livestock on an app, and it'll get shipped to you.
Fascinating. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you've
so
shared this with me. That's very cool. So I think, yeah, technology is going to enable innovations and entrepreneurship, and there will be some people who will really capitalize on it and create new branches that we should be excited about. So what have we seen so far? We've seen that there's a new way of working altogether. I think what we can establish is that working from home has broken the myth of office productivity. You don't have to be in the office to be productive. It has raised concerns about mental health. Some people have been affected by not interacting with other people. Some people have, I can't name names, but some people have absolutely thrived. Uh, um, Flexible hours have added a whole new level of convenience. There was a study by McKinsey that talked about how more and more Americans are demanding flexibility at work because they're allowed to do so. In some of the industries that we touched upon, like computers and IT, some entertainment sections, some obviously you had to be there to execute. The industries that allowed for working from home, those industries, individuals there particularly demanded to stay there. And I believe that their productivity was not, the median productivity increased over the last couple of years. It has resulted in things like burnout, obviously, like the mental stress that you talked about. But at
yeah.
the same time, I think there's been an improvement in happiness. There has been an improvement in overall job satisfaction. There has been an improvement in productivity. The freelance economy has increased. You see more entrepreneurs today. You see things that are being powered by the technological advancements that we've seen over the last couple of years, or we've talked about on this podcast, AI, immersive experiences, the communication tools that we're using right now. We're using Skype. We were talking about Riverside. We were talking about Zencaster,
Yeah.
and these other tools that are just they're there enabling you. The technology is doing exactly what it should. You are able to get that freedom. So we also understand that markets are cyclical. Things that are on the rise, there are things that are on the rise, there are things that are on the decline. With work from home, where do you see this trend settling down eventually?
I don't think it's going to last that long. Probably by the end of this year, they're going to be like a small hybrid work. But I think, primarily in India, I think everybody's going to go to office, or they'll be probably forced to go to office, or and there'll be a small group of people who are
Holdouts.
yeah, the holdouts who won't go to office, but majority will go back to office. That's what my opinion or perspective is. What do you think about yours?
I don't want to agree with you, but I'm inclined to agree with you. That makes sense because companies are already looking at like when you brought up the 8 day a month thing, companies are looking at that in between where they're trying to ease you back into the office. And I think there is a bit of a cognitive bias that will play in companies' minds. Like you want to optimize on your costs, and obviously real estate plays a massive role in that. You want to make sure that your workforce is optimized. So you want just the people that are necessary, and these are decisions that management and administrators are making all the time. And I think that working from home is going to affect that one way or another. But eventually, when considering the pros and cons of the mental stimulation, considering the pros and cons of productivity, considering the pros and cons of cost, we are going to see a system where the hybrid working model is going to continue to exist, and it's going to continue to exist for a certain group of people. But predominantly, we are likely to see a shift back towards the office.
Yeah.
All right then. On that
Surprisingly,
note,
we agree. We agree on it.
like I said, I don't want to necessarily, but I think that's going to be the system. I think that's what people are going to gravitate towards.
Yep, agreed.
All right, then I think that concludes the end of our discussion for today. This was a longer one than we usually have, but I think it was a very productive one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have all the links that we talked about in the bio in our description below. And thank you. See you guys on the next one.
Everybody.